Welcome to Sportscaster News. It's Thursday morning, the beginning of week 15. And guess what? We're walking into a season where there's a lot of hot teams and a lot of teams that are cold as ice and really are looking more towards the offseason than they are the playoffs. And what we're going to do in this stream is go over who's hot in the NFL and who's not. So let's start off. We're going to go in divisional order. And right now, the Buffalo Bills, the AFC East. First in the AFC East at 10-3, and you don't get a lot more hotter than what they are right now. They are winners last 6 of their last 7. The last loss they had was 4 weeks ago against the Arizona Cardinals, where they lost by 2 points. And I'm sure all of you remember the Hail Murray. So that's the last time they lost. So, yeah, I mean, you don't get much hotter than what this team is right now. They just got done defeating the Steelers and the Niners and the Chargers, so that's really who they've had the last 3 weeks. They're doing a very, very good job. Josh Allen right now is probably not only is he having the best year of his career, he's having an arguably top 5 quarterback in the NFL type season. 76.9 QBR. He's got 28 touchdowns. He's pushing 3,700 yards passing. He's most likely going to break that 4,000-yard mark. And he's doing it because of the addition of Stephon Diggs. I mean, Diggs is right now, going into week 15 with 1,167 yards, right? 100 catches. This kid is doing everything. This passing attack for the Bills is doing everything very, very well. I think they are a hot team. I think they are a team to look out for in the playoffs upcoming. And just be careful. Obviously, the next games that they have to finish off their schedule, Broncos, Patriots, Dolphins. All 3 of these are very winnable. As a matter of fact, I think personally, the most difficult game they're going to have is probably the Dolphins, because I think the Dolphins right now have a better offense than the Patriots. So what we're looking at this, they should easily beat the Broncos. The Patriots might be an interesting game. It is a primetime game the week after that. And then, of course, they finish the season off hosting Miami. The next team on my list is the team I just talked about, the Miami Dolphins. Excuse me. Now, this is a team that's hot. They're second in the AFC. They're 8-5. Now, they just lost their last game, but it was to the Kansas City Chiefs. And it was 33-27. They put up a really good fight. Before last week, they were winners of 7 of their last 8. And the only 2 losses is Chiefs and Broncos. In that time span, they beat the Niners, the Jets, the Rams, the Cardinals, the Chargers, the Jets again, and then the Bengals. Now, granted, that stretch isn't the best, but the Rams and the Cardinals in that situation, they beat very good playoff teams. And you can only play who's on your schedule. Now, who's next on their list? Well, you got the Patriots, the Raiders, and the Bills. As I just got done saying, that's 3 very tough games. They legitimately could lose all 3 of those. I see them winning probably 2 out of the 3, only because I think the Dolphins' defense is good enough to hold off the Patriots offense and the Raiders offense, and their offense will put up some points. Now, the Patriots do have a very good defense, but if you flip it around, I believe as an overall team, I think the Miami Dolphins, with the run that they have right now, are on a more of a streak to win this game than the Patriots are. Now, you have 2 quarterbacks that have played quite well this season for the Miami Dolphins. Obviously, you have Ryan Fitzpatrick, who in 8 games has completed 68.5% of his completions for over 1,900 yards, 12 touchdowns. And then you have Tua, who's played 7 of those games for 1,200 yards, 62% completion percentage, and 9 touchdowns to 1 interception. Both these guys have been sacked 14 times. The running game could be a little bit better as a team. They're not averaging the highest, only 3.6, led by Myles Gaskin, who is at 3.9. He's been in 8 games. But Devontae Parker, come on, my guy. He's doing a very good job. Between him and Mike Gesicki, they are doing a wonderful job complimenting whoever's at quarterback. Gesicki and Parker both have over 600 yards. They're both averaging more than 12 yards of reception. And Parker's got 4 touchdowns. Gesicki's got 6. It's a very solid team offensively. They could be better in the run game, but they can put up enough points to allow their defense to win most of their games. And that, frankly, is how they've been doing it. This defense has been a stud. I mean, absolute stud. You got Eric Rowe with 2 interceptions. You got Nick Needham with 2 interceptions. Let's talk about Xavier Howard, who, 9 picks on the season? What? 9? Holy crap. That's a lot. And the only issue I really see, and it's not that bad, they're getting to quarterbacks once in a while. Kyle Van Noy's got 6 sacks. Jerome Baker's got 5. Shaq Lawson even has 4 sacks on the season. So this defense is very solid all the way around, and they are definitely trending in the up. You're still here? Awesome! Thanks for watching this stream. Please, if you have a moment of your time, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel so you're notified next time I go live. And if you got a few extra seconds, hit that description down there below the video and check out all the places that you can follow me, whether it be Sportscaster here on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and there's a couple places where you can help donate to my channel. That way I can continue to bring all this content to you. Thank you for your support. Now, let's get back to the video. Next on the list is, of course, the New England Patriots, who have legitimately dropped massively over the last 2 years. Right now, they're currently sitting 3rd in the AFC East at 6-7. Cam Newton obviously leading the team at quarterback. It's a little worrisome, honestly. He is completing most of his passes, 66% for 2,172 yards. He's got 5 touchdowns, but 10 interceptions and 23 sacks. That's hurtful. What they do lack in the passing game, they make up for in the run game. Between Damian Harris, Rex Burkhead, Sony Michel, Cam Newton, even James White, who has stuck his head in the game a time or two. These guys really run the ball well. As a team, they average 4.5 yards a carry. As a team, that means, taking in consideration some of the weaker runs on this team, like, reverses by Jacoby Myers or Dante Moncrief or N'Keal Harry or something like that. But Damian Harris, 691 yards, averaging 5 yards a carry. And Cam Newton, 451, averaging 4 yards a carry. Sony Michel, believe it or not, even though he's only got 43 attempts, leads this team at running backs, really, 5.3 yards a carry. And that says something considering the type of season he had last year. Now, they are hurting when Damiere Byrd and Jacoby Myers are your top receiving threats. Both of them just over 500 yards a carry. Both averaging over 12 yards of reception, though, but only 1 touchdown between both of them. That's not a good sign. Not a good sign at all. Defensively, oh my goodness. Adrian Phillips got 2 interceptions. Devin McCourty's got 2 interceptions. And you know what's scary? You know what's really scary? Stephon Gilmore only has 1 interception. But J.C. Jackson, the stud this year, who is not Stephon Gilmore, it's J.C. Jackson. 7 interceptions this year. That's it. That's an impressive number. I mean, he's right there behind Xavier Howard sitting there right now. Sacks wise, I think they could do quite a bit better. They're not getting to the quarterback at all. Chase Winovich leads this team with 3.5. 3.5. As a team on the season, they've only got 19 sacks. 19. Whereas as a team, they've given up 28 sacks. Are you kidding me? That's what's really hurting them. They can't get pressure on the quarterback, and they can't protect their quarterbacks. They run the ball very well, but the passing game needs serious improvement. They are on the cold side right now. They're not hot. I don't think that they're going to be doing very well in the next couple weeks because of their schedule is not the prettiest in the world. They've got the Dolphins next week. Then they've got the Bills the week after that in a primetime game. And then, of course, they finish the season off with the lowly Jets that haven't even won a game yet this year. Honestly, I'm looking at this thinking they're probably going to end up, even though they're 6-7 right now, I see them only going 7-9 this season. And I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. The next team on my list is, of course, the New York Jets, and you can't get colder than what the Jets are right now. They not only are 0-13, but they just lost to the Seahawks 40-3. 40-3. And then they got to play the Rams this week, then the Browns, then the Patriots. They are definitely, in my opinion, I mean, if you got money, yeah, they're going 0-16. There's no question about it. Sam Darnold is only completing 58.4% of his completions. 1,560 yards in 9 games. 5 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. But you got to remember, he's got 28 sacks on him in 9 games. 28 sacks in 9 games. That's over 3 sacks a game. Why? Because this offensive line is awful. Even with that first round tackle pick, Becton. Frank Gore leads the team, believe it or not, in rushing, but he's only getting 3.6 yards a carry. But that's like what he gets every carry. Every time he touches the ball, he's guaranteed those 3.6. You almost never see him get tackled for a loss. 546 yards rushing. This team, as a team, only has 1,348 yards rushing, and they only have 7 rushing touchdowns so far this season. Jamison Crowder and Brashad Perryman are doing a very good job splitting the receiving duties. Both of them have 9 games this year, 510 yards, 400 yards, respectively for both, and together they have 8 touchdowns. Now, outside of that, this team really needs some serious help. Now, Denzel Mims hasn't been the guy because he's been injured quite a bit. He's only played 6 games. But, my God, his average is 17.1 yards a reception. He ain't got no touchdowns, but he's doing a very good job when he does play. Defensively, Quinnen Williams is their stud back there with 6 sacks. And former Colt Pierre Desir, I believe, leads the team in interceptions with 3. But defensively, they really need to go out there and get some help defensively. They need to get some help offensively, especially in the run game, and a better offensive line. Now, we all know they're going to get the first pick in the draft, and they'll probably end up getting Trevor Lawrence, but will that put Trevor in the same situation Sam Darnold is with not having an offensive line, no one to throw to, no running back to take the pressure off of him, and a defense that is going to put the game on Trevor Lawrence's shoulders? We're going to have to keep a close eye on this over the next few years. Now that we're done with the AFC East, let's move on to another division. How about the AFC East? Let's move to the AFC North and the Baltimore Ravens, who are sitting at 8-5. This is a very low win total compared to what was expected at the beginning of the season. They are kind of on a high right now. They did defeat the Cowboys 2 weeks ago, 34-17, and they just in the fourth quarter was able to skim over. I mean, just barely skim over the Browns. 47-42, but don't let that 47 fool you. Two of those points were off of some just last minute trying to do a Music City Miracle type thing, and it didn't work. Ended up with a safety. They won by a Justin Tucker field goal, okay, against the Browns. But putting up 47 points and showing that, hey, you know what? Lamar Jackson's run game is still there against the Browns, who are not a bad team. They've won 2 in a row, but only 2 of their last 5 and 3 of their last 7. That's not a good sign. I'm not going to say they're hot, but I'm going to put them at lukewarm because, quite frankly, after the Browns, they've got a very easy schedule coming up with the Jaguars, Giants, and the Bengals are the last 3 on their team, on their schedule to play this season. They legitimately could end up being 11-5, even with a very poor middle of the schedule performance by this Ravens team. They are still, however, 3rd in the AFC North, which is kind of a scary situation because even it being 11-5, there is a chance they don't make the playoffs. That'll be a very weird situation, especially considering there's 7 playoff spots. Lamar Jackson obviously leads the team in passing in 12 games. He's completed about 64% of his passes for 2,218 yards, but he's only averaging 7.2 yards per attempt. He's got 18 passing touchdowns to 7 interceptions, but he's been sacked 28 times. Now, Jackson leads this team in rushing as well, and it's not a surprise, but it's not nearly what we've seen last year. He's got almost 800 yards, 793 at 6.3 yards a clip. He does have 6 rushing touchdowns, but really the running game is being split between 4 people. You got Gus Edwards also, who's averaging 5 yards a clip at 536 yards on 108 carries. He's got 6 touchdowns. J.K. Dobbins, he's got 96 carries, 504 yards, and 5.3 yards a clip. He's got 5 touchdowns. And then, of course, Mark Ingram, who's got 63 carries for 260 yards, 4.1 yard average, and 2 touchdowns. This team averages 5.3 yards a carry, and that's what makes this team dangerous. If you can't stop the run, how in the world are you going to stop the play action pass in the RPO? You just don't know. Now, the team is led by Marquise Brown. My apologies. I was a Ravens fan, came to me on one of my streams once and told me, hey, you have to pronounce that S. So my apologies. Sometimes I will still say Marquis because that just comes off the lips easier and it's kind of habit, but my apologies and know that I understand. He's caught 43 out of 81 targets for 605 yards, 14-yard average, and 5 touchdowns. But he's had an issue with drops this season. Mark Andrews also has had issues with drops this season. He's the second leading receiver. Also, 43 receptions, but on 66 targets. 532 yards, 12-yard average, almost 12 and a half yard average, 6 touchdowns. And then there's Snead and Boykin, who both average around 13 yards a catch. They got a little over 600 yards between them and 5 touchdowns between them. So, in all honesty, this offense is actually good. The problem is we're seeing a lot of drop passes. And we're seeing where a lot of times these receivers are not able to get open right away. And I don't know if that has to do with the play calls or the fact that they're not good enough to get open on one-on-one situations. But a lot of the times, Lamar Jackson has to scramble out of that pocket. It also could be the fact that this offensive line has just been makeshift all season with injuries and COVID. Now, defensively, they're not doing too shabby as a team with 28 sacks among the group. Matthew Judon sitting there with 4 of them. And you got Deshaun Elliott and Marlon Humphrey, believe it or not, with 2.5 sacks apiece. Interception-wise, you got Marcus Peters with 3, and you got Tyus Bowser, the linebacker, with 3. That's right. Tyus, the Mario ultimate enemy for Mario Brothers, Bowser. He's doing a great job out there at linebacker with the 2 sacks, the 3 interceptions, and he's got 26 total tackles on the season in the 13 games that he's played. I think this defense, now that they've got some of their players back off the injury, could legitimately be a much, much better team overall than what they were. Like I said, they have suffered a lot of injuries over the season, and they seem to be getting healthy and off this COVID list. They could be trending up. I'm going to give them, like I said, a lukewarm. We still have to wait to see if guys like Campbell and Williams on that D-line come back to par after their COVID situation. Next on my list, after the Baltimore Ravens, we're going to go to the bottom of the heap. At 4th in the AFC North, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. My apologies. This is as cold a team as you could get right now. They're not making the playoffs. They're only 2-10-1, and they've lost legitimately 8 of their last 9. The last time they won was against, believe it or not, the Tennessee Titans. They lost to the Ravens, the Colts, the Browns, won against the Titans, then lost to the Steelers, the Washington football team, the Giants, Dolphins, Cowboys. Now, reasoning for this, a lot of it has to do, I would say that a lot of it has to do with the fact that Joe Burrow went down. But let's face it, they only had 1 win with Joe Burrow, or 2 wins with Joe Burrow in the first place. I don't think that Joe Burrow has a lot to do with it. They are terrible on the offensive line and on defense. There ain't many teams colder than this team currently right now. They have a couple teams that they have to play left. They go against the Steelers this week, prime time. Then they face the Houston Texans and then finish off their season hosting the Baltimore Ravens. Statistic-wise, before Joe Burrow went down, he was actually doing quite well, completing 65% of his completions, about 2,700 yards, 6.7 yards of completion, though. That's a terrible average. 13 touchdowns, 5 picks, but sacked 32 times. Brendan Allen and Ryan Finley have also got 7 sacks in their 3 or 4 games that they've started. This is just a terrible, terrible offensive line. Joe Mixon, before he got hurt, was doing quite well. Well, not doing as well as what he usually does prior because of this offensive line. Only 3.6 yards a carry. And then Giovanni Bernard also 3.3 yards a carry. This team is averaging 3.8 yards a carry only because you got guys like Sean Williams, who's a safety, coming in and ran it twice for 46 yards. You have some of your reverses like T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd that are really getting up there and getting some yardage. Ryan Finley also had a carry for 19 yards. So really, as a team, their traditional running backs are only averaging about 3.5 yards a carry, maybe 3.6. Wide receiver wise, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, A.J. Green, very good combos. And then what I think they could really use is an extra tight end. Drew Sample's just not that guy. He's doing okay, but I think that if they found themselves a better prospect at tight end and help on this offensive line next year, this team could actually fight a little bit in their division. Defensively, they only have 15 sacks on the season, and that is led by Carl Lawson at 4.5 sacks. And interception-wise, you have Jesse Bates, the safety, with 3 interceptions, and Logan Wilson, the linebacker, with 2. They only have 9 picks on the season. They really need a lot of help on this defense and the offensive line for them to be any kind of team to be reckoned with or even looked at as a threat in the next upcoming few seasons. I expect to see a few moves for the offensive line and defense this offseason for the Bengals. Moving on from the Bengals, we have the Cleveland Browns, who are second in the AFC North at 9-4. Now, even though they lost to the Ravens, I still say they are on a hot streak. They still scored 42 points, and the Ravens ran all over them, which you kind of expect generally. But before that, they were 4 wins in a row against the Texans, the Eagles, the Jaguars, and they defeated the Titans. I get that the Texans, the Eagles, and the Jaguars are not something you really want to hang your hat on, but when they defeated the Titans, that is a big situation the week before, and that says a lot for this ball club. They still have 3 teams left, which is the Giants, the Jets, and the Steelers. They legitimately are almost guaranteed the next 2 wins. The Steelers game in Week 17 it has a very big chance to come down to who wins this division, because the Steelers also play the Indianapolis Colts in Week 16. If the Steelers lose that game and the Cleveland Browns win their next 2, that Week 17 game could legitimately decide the AFC North. Statistic-wise, Baker Mayfield, after Odell Beckham Jr. went down, he has just been lighting it on fire. He's completing about 62% of his passes. He's got 2,785 yards, 23 touchdowns to only 8 interceptions, 17 sacks in the 13 games that he's played. That's actually quite solid. And his quarterback rating is a 96.6. He has absolutely done a much better job in the second half of the season than he has the first half. But that's not the story of this team. Really, the story of the team is the 1-2 punch between Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt at running back. Nick Chubb getting 881 yards, 5.9 yards a carry for a running back, 9 touchdowns. Kareem Hunt adds an additional 772 yards, 4.4 yards a carry, and another 5 touchdowns. That 1-2 punch might be the best in the NFL when you're not considering your quarterback as a running threat, if you're just going by running backs. Receiving-wise, Jarvis Landry is a stud. 87 targets, 60 catches, 728 yards, 12.1 yards a carry, right? My goodness, he's doing great. I think he's going to end up being that stud receiver. But Rashard Higgins has been doing a wonderful job as a deep threat for this team, averaging 15.1 yards a carry. And he's actually, if I remember, he's second on the team in receiving touchdowns behind, go figure, Kareem Hunt. All right. The questions are, where's Odell Beckham Jr. going to be at the end of this year? I mean, they seem like they're playing better without him. Is there a chance he might get traded? Who knows? Defensively, this team's doing pretty good. 34 sacks on the season. And, of course, that is led by Myles Garrett with 10.5 sacks on his own. But don't forget about Olivier Vernon, who has 7 as well. And the interception-wise, they have 10 on the season. And that is led by B.J. Goodson at linebacker with 2. And then, of course, Denzel Ward also has 2. This defense isn't bad. I think they could add a little bit more at the linebacker position to make this defense a little bit more solid. But they have very good pass rush and enough in the secondary to do what they need to get done. This team is on a hot streak, I believe, even with that loss, as I said before. And if they can win out, they have a very serious chance to scare some people in the playoffs this year. Moving on to the number 1 position in the AFC North, it is the Pittsburgh Steelers at 11-2. And I'm going to say they're on a cold streak right now. They've lost the last 2 games. Now, they won 9 straight. Or 11, they won 11 games straight. Against not the best. Now, they started off Giants, Broncos, Texans, Eagles. Now, we all know those are bad teams. Then they won against the Browns 38-7. That says something. But that was prior to the OBJ injury. Then they beat the Titans by 3 points. Very close game. They defeated the Ravens in a very close game, 28-4. Both the Titans and the Ravens game, and even the Cowboys the week after, could have been losses. They legitimately could have lost those games. Then they faced the Bengals and the Jaguars. Woohoo. Then they faced the Ravens, which again, they could have lost that game 19-4. Then they lost to the Washington football team and then the Buffalo Bills. And the Bills game, in my opinion, once Josh Allen got to understand this Blitzburg defense, it seemed like they were able to move the ball well enough. And offensively, this is why the Pittsburgh Steelers are on a cold streak right now. On a massive cold streak. I don't think their offense is all that good. They've got a very aggressive defense, but if you can game plan around that aggressiveness, move the ball enough, and not turn the football over, you legitimately have a chance to beat this Pittsburgh Steelers. Even though they are 11-2. Now, they face the Bengals this week, then the Colts, then the Browns. Honestly, right now, the way I'm looking at it, I see this team ended up being 12-4 at the end of the year. Because I don't think that they're going to beat the Indianapolis Colts, and I don't think they're going to beat the Cleveland Browns. But if they could get their offense figured out, get a run game going, because without the run game, that is severely hurting their passing game. Right now, Ben Roethlisberger is doing a good job passing the football, but he's only averaging 6.3 yards a reception. I mean, that's not very good. He's getting 66% of his completions, 3,292 yards, 29 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, and only sacked 11 times. Only sacked 11. It's because he's getting rid of the football in 2.2 seconds. That's the average from the time to snap to the time of release, which means he's throwing a lot of slants and a lot of quick outs. So man press coverage is something with two safeties over the top in order to protect just in case. I think a team could legitimately really hurt this offense, and you've seen it the last couple weeks. That's how they've been played. Like I said, this running game's not doing well at all. James Conner's only averaging 4.3 yards a carry, which is about league average. But he's not been able to do it as of late. 663 yards for the season. Benny Snell's the second leading rusher, and he's only averaging 3.3 yards a carry. As a team, 3.7. Touchdowns-wise, they have 10 rushing touchdowns and 6 fumbles. Yes, that's right. The running game has lost 6 fumbles. So's the receiving game, by the way. Chase Claypool, who started the season off an absolute stud, was really up there for Rookie of the Year, has 664 yards, 13-yard average, 8 touchdowns, but he's fumbled it 3 times. Deontay Johnson is the leading receiver, believe it or not, with 69 catches, almost 700 yards, 5 touchdowns. He's also fumbled it once. Eric Ebron has been having fumbleitis all season, much to the chagrin of Colts fans and Lions fans, because they've seen what happened with him. They know that he has a problem with that. He is a big play tight end, but you also got to take it into consideration that there are times when he will just drop that football with no apparent reason why. Defensively, the strength of the team is the defense. They, I'm pretty sure, lead the league right now in sacks, 45, led by, of course, TJ Watt, who has 12 sacks on the season. You got Bud Dupree, who's out for the year with 8 sacks, but Stephon Tuitt also has 8 sacks. I mean, this team knows how to get to the quarterback. They blitz a lot. Interception-wise, they got 17 of those bad boys, led by, of course, Minkah Fitzpatrick, who has 4, but there are other guys on here like Terrell Edmonds and Joe Hayden, Mike Hilton, and Steve Nelson, who all have 2 apiece. I'm going to say this team is on a cold streak right now because they've lost 2 in a row, but what do you know? They could, if they could figure out their run game, then there's a good possibility that they could be a very dangerous team in the playoffs. But I'm going to put them more on the cold side than the hot side. Moving on to the AFC South, let's go ahead and go to the Houston Texans, who honestly are a bit on a cold side right now. They're only 4-9. But to be fair, they're on fire if you want to look at them at their 4-9. Last 6 games, they're 3-3, right? They beat the Jaguars. They lost to the Browns by 3 points. 3 points. Then they beat the Patriots. Then they beat the Lions. And then they lost to the Colts and lost to the Bears. Next up, they have the Colts, the Bengals, and the Titans. I can see them winning one of these games by most average, which means that they'll end up being 5-11 at the season end. This is a team that's kind of scary because they have the offensive firepower when healthy to really put points up on the board. But currently they are sitting with guys on the team that ain't going to be able to play because they're either suspended or injured. You still have 2 stud players, one on offense, one on defense, in the form of J.J. Watt and Deshaun Watson, which both guys can take over a game on their respective side of the field. Deshaun Watson, near 69 completion percentage. 69%, right? 3,761 yards, 25 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. But he's on that streak and a 109.4 quarterback rating. Honestly, the NFL should not be basing MVP off of whether or not your team is a winner or not. Because if it wasn't, Deshaun Watson would be in the running for MVP of this year. Because he is just absolutely having a stud year. Now, he's been sacked 39 times. That has a lot to do with his offensive line. Rushing-wise, David Johnson, good running back, 4 yards a carry, but he's been injured off and on all season. Duke Johnson's more of a receiving back, and obviously Deshaun, he can run the football as well. Will Fuller has really stepped into that number 1 receiving slot ever since DeAndre Hopkins was traded off. He has 53 catches, 879 yards, averaging over 16.5 yards of reception and 8 touchdowns. No fumbles. Brandon Cooks also really giving his all as well with 57 catches, 784 yards, and 3 touchdowns to go with that. And Jordan Atkins and Darren Fells is a nice 1-2 punch at tight end. Defensively, they're hurting. They have a team legitimately, name-wise, that should be better on paper than what they've been this year. But they're not getting anywhere near the quarterback, right? And they're not getting interceptions. It's terrible. They have 31 sacks. 31? Where'd they get 31 at? Because I don't see that. Oh, it's because it's just random guys here and there. Whitney Merciless and J.J. Watt lead the team in sacks, 4 and 5. That's it. And then you got Zach Cunningham with 3, Terrell Adams with 2, Reed 2. You just got a bunch of guys who like to blitz. They blitz a lot. And because they do that, they get tore up in the passing game and the run game, especially the run game. Interception-wise, they've only got 3 picks on the season. 3. That's right. No one has more than 1 interception. Vernon Hargreaves has 1. J.J. Watt has a pick 6. And Bradley Roby has an interception as well. This defense, I don't know if it's the coordinator or what, or if it's just because when you have names on this team like Zach Cunningham, Justin Reed, Vernon Hargreaves, J.J. Watt, Benardrick McKinney, Bradley Roby, Philip Gaines, Whitley Merciless, guys like that. You got names on this team. They should be playing a lot better than what they actually are. Quite frankly, I think this team is not necessarily on a hot streak. I think it's more on a cold streak because, let's face it, they're facing the Colts, the Bengals, and the Titans. Like I said, I don't see them winning but one game, and that's against the Bengals. Moving on outside of that, we're going to go ahead and talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are last in the AFC South. They're at 1-12. The only win coming against one of the leaders of the AFC in the Indianapolis Colts week 1, where I believe they fought a team that really did not understand their identity and lost multiple key players in that game for the season due to injury. Guys like Malik Hooker, guys like Marlon Mack. And they had to redefine what they wanted to do as a team. They haven't won a game since. They've made it close a couple times. The Vikings game was close. The Browns game was close. The game against their last game against the Texans was close. But I don't see how they're going to win the next 3 games where, my goodness, you got the Ravens, you got the Bears, you got the Colts. Last game of the year. I don't see how they can win any of those. Gardner Minshew is a quarterback I feel as though should be starting for this team. Jake Luton is god-awful. Mike Glennon's not very good either. Gardner Minshew's completing over 65% of his passes, 14 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and he provides a bit of a scrambling ability. I think he's actually pretty good. But the guy that stands out is undrafted free agent running back James Robinson, who has over 1,000 yards already. 1,035. He's averaging 4.6 yards a carry, and he's got 7 touchdowns. So, yeah, I think that this is a good team when they're healthy. When you have guys like Keelan Cole, you have DJ Chark, you have Laviska Shenault, Chris Connolly. These guys are all very, very good. Tyler Eifert is an underrated tight end as well, even though I like James O'Shaughnessy more. So, they have an offense, and when they're healthy, they can move the football. However, defensively, they are in a lot of trouble. They have 16 sacks. That's it. On the season. 16 sacks. Led by what looks to be Dwayne Smoot, who has 4.5. That's right. That's not a good situation. And they just don't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. C.J. Henderson looked very solid at the beginning of the year. Even got his only interception against the Indianapolis Colts. earlier this year and took it back 22 yards, almost a touchdown. This team has got a lot of building defensively, though, and on their offensive line. So I believe that they should not move on from Gardner Minshew, even though there is a good chance they might, being that they could have the second pick in the draft. They're obviously on a cold streak right now. Moving on, we're going to go to the Indianapolis Colts, who are, even though they're tied with the Titans, they are second due to divisional losses. The Colts, I'm going to say, are on a hot streak. They're winners of 6 of their last 8. They defeated the Raiders and the Texans convincingly, then lost to the Titans. But granted, the loss had a lot to do with injuries on and off the field in key positions, such as offensive line and defensive line. And Derrick Henry was just able to run all over them. But then they beat the Packers the week before, who's the number 1 seed in the NFC currently. And they beat the Titans 2 weeks before they lost to the Titans by just as big a turnaround score, 34-17, when they were actually healthy. The rest of the teams that they got to play is the Texans, the Steelers, and the Jaguars. This is a schedule I believe the Indianapolis Colts could legitimately win out and end up 12-4. I think they're on a hot streak right now. Jonathan Taylor is just looking absolutely stud the last few weeks. And Phillip Rivers is playing out of his mind, considering what everyone said, that he was an actual, washed old quarterback. He's completing over 68% of his passes, 3,500 yards, averaging just under 8 yards a pass. He's got 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Now, he's only got 3 interceptions in the last 8 games and 16 touchdowns. He's 16 touchdowns and 3 interceptions since since the Colts found their identity on offense. And he's only been sacked 13 times this season. Jacoby Brissett is a nice little person to come in and do a little change up when it comes to fourth down, to get a first down when they need it. Jonathan Taylor has been playing, like I said, very, very well. He's averaging 4.5 yards a carry. He was only averaging 4 yards a carry about 4 weeks ago. 759 yards, 6 touchdowns. He's had 1 fumble. It's the only rushing fumble on this Indianapolis Colts team. Jordan Wilkins is second on the team with 308 yards, and Nyheim Hines has 276. They're averaging close to 1,500 yards on the ground and 4 yards a carry as a team. In recent weeks, we have seen the passing game really come alive. T.Y. Hilton has really blown up over the last couple weeks. He's got 46 catches, 604 yards, 13-yard average, and 4 touchdowns. Zach Pascal also 445 yards, 13-yard average. Michael Pittman Jr., who missed quite a bit early this season due to surgery, has came back and really helped out in the passing game, along with the tight ends, Jack Doyle, Trey Burton, and Mo Alley Cox. And then, of course, Nyheim Hines is a great receiver out of the backfield. Story is this defense, however, who has 28 sacks on the season and 15, you heard me right, 15 interceptions. You got guys that are just coming out of the woodwork. You got Xavier Rhodes, who's leads the NFL in quarterback rating against him. You have Julian Blackmon, who's a rookie, who's come out and played incredibly well. The addition of DeForest Buckner has been game-changing. Kenny Moore just had one of the greatest. He leads this team with 4 interceptions right now and had that beautiful one-handed skying interception over this. He's only 5'9" and did this over a 6'6" Darren Waller last week. Obviously, the linebacking core of Bobby Okereke, Anthony Walker, and Darius Leonard are just one of the best groups in the NFL. This defense has just been absolutely stud and fantastic all season. And I could this is a team that I think they are finding their way offensively. Their defense is getting healthy again, and it's a team I don't think anyone wants to play in the playoffs if they make it. And I'm sure they will. Let's move on. The Tennessee Titans. Again, a team I can't say they're not hot because they've won 3 of their last 4 and 4 of their last 6. They just beat the Jaguars 31-10, a blowout, which should have been a blowout, but then they lost to the Browns in a very, very close game. Then they beat the Colts. They beat the Ravens. They lost to the Indianapolis Colts, obviously, as I said before. They also have 2 should-be easy wins and 1 very tough game coming up. They have the Lions, the Packers, and the Texans. The Packers, the only game, which is also a primetime game, which a lot of people are going to be curious about. Statistic-wise, Ryan Tannehill playing very, very well. Quarterback rating over 108. 3,200 yards passing. 28 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. My goodness. 65.8 completion percentage. Now, Derrick Henry obviously leads the NFL in rushing at 1,532 yards, 5.2 yards a carry, and 14 touchdowns. This kid is just a train that cannot be stopped. Receiving-wise, A.J. Brown, Corey Davis has been in an excellent 1-2 punch where you got Corey Davis as a great deep threat and A.J. Brown, somebody who can catch 50-50 balls and has yards after catch ability. A.J. Brown, 837 yards. Corey Davis, 835 yards. Unbelievable. 9 touchdowns for Brown, 4 touchdowns for Davis. Let's not forget about that athletic receiving tight end, Jonnu Smith, who has 358 yards, but is a red zone threat with 7 touchdowns. Defensively, they only have 14 sacks on the season. 14. That's it. Led by Harold Landry at 4.5. The one thing that they cannot do is get to the quarterback, and that could be a problem when they go up against teams that have been passing the ball very well as of late. Teams like the Buffalo Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Indianapolis Colts, or even the Cleveland Browns. So they got to be able to get to the quarterback and land home for them to really, in my opinion, have a shot. Interception-wise, 12 interceptions on the season, which is not bad. That's about average, about 1 a game. Malcolm Butler obviously has 3 of those, and so does Amani Hooker. Moving on to the next team. In the AFC West, we're going to look at the Denver Broncos, who's 3rd in the AFC at 5-8. And it's tough to gauge this team, okay? It's a team where 1 week they didn't even have a quarterback on their roster because of the COVID. And I can't call them cold right now because in the last 4 games, they beat the Panthers and they beat the Dolphins, okay? But they lost to the Saints and the Chiefs. And I can honestly say they should have lost to the Saints and the Chiefs. The Dolphins, however, I think they should have lost to, but they beat them. They've beaten teams that they should not have beaten. For instance, right? My goodness. But they've lost to, their schedule has been awful. The Titans, the Steelers, the Bucks. Bam, right away. Chiefs. Then you got the Raiders, who are an up and down team. The Dolphins, the Saints, the Chiefs again. Next, they got the Bills, the Chargers, and the Raiders. This is not a good situation for this team. Now, was Drew Lock the quarterback that we all thought he was going to be this year? No. Absolutely not. He's only played 10 games this season. He's got about a 57% completion percentage at about 2,200 yards at 6.8 yards per pass. Now, 13 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. That's not good. But he's only been sacked 12 times in 10 games. That is a very, very good ratio. Very good ratio. That's just over one time a game. That's not bad at all. Now, Melvin Gordon, Philip Lindsay, these are good running backs. Very, very good running backs. Melvin Gordon averaging 4.6 yards a carry. He's got 6 touchdowns on the season, 753 yards. Philip Lindsay, 4.3 yards a carry, 464 yards, and he's got a touchdown to go along with that. And receiving wise, they've got weapons and the threat of that. Tim Patrick has came out of nowhere, in my opinion. 15 yards a catch on 43 catches, 643 yards, 6 touchdowns. Jerry Jeudy, 636 yards. He's only got 2 touchdowns, but averaging almost 16 yards a catch. Noah Fant, obviously playing very, very well at tight end. Near 500 yards receiving. KJ Hamler has stepped up some as well. Cortland Sutton, obviously, sadly injured and not be able to play. That could have hurt this team quite a bit. Defensively, also, they were hurt quite a bit due to injuries. But there's still 36 sacks on the season. That's a very impressive number, but only 8 interceptions. That hurts. And of those 8, Justin Simmons, the safety, has half of those at 4. Now, Malik Reed has 6.5 sacks. Bradley Chubb has 7.5 sacks. And then DeMarcus Walker has 4.5 sacks. They can get pressure on quarterbacks when they need to. So defensively, they're actually still studded. They still have some guys that ain't playing this year due to injury. So next year, I think they'll just be fine. They get a lot of these injuries back. The question is, do they really feel good about Drew Lock? I don't know. I don't feel good about him. I thought he could take that next step this year, but he didn't. I'm just going to look at this as a cold team, even though they're 5-8. I see them maybe winning one game of their last 3. The next team on the list, we're going to go to the Chargers, who's dead last at 4-9 in the AFC West. And yes, they had a win. Matter of fact, they've had 2 wins in their last 4. The Jets. Come on, guys. Come on. When they play good teams, they don't win. The only 4 games that they've won is the Bengals, the Jaguars, the Jets, and the Falcons. And then they play the Raiders, the Broncos, and the Chiefs. I don't expect them. They're not going to win any more games this year. They're going to be 4-12 on the year. Justin Herbert played very, very well. In 12 games, 66% completion percentage, almost 3,500 yards, 7 yards per attempt, just about 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, but he's been sacked 26 times. So that's more than 2 sacks a game. That's not a good thing. But he's got, as a rookie, man, 94.7 quarterback rating, solid as heck. The only issue is their running game's not been there. I mean, they've only got 1,460 yards rushing. Austin Eckler's got 407, but he's only been able to play 7 games. Now, I believe he's back. I'm not 100% sure. At 3.2 yards a carry. And Kalen Ballage at 3.6 has been Justin Jackson, 4 yards a carry. Been solid. I think he should have got more carries than what he's given. Receiving-wise, Keenan Allen, obviously that guy, right? 99 catches, 975 yards, and 8 touchdowns. He's been the man. Mike Williams right beside him, and Hunter Henry have been very, very solid additions on this offense. Defensively, 23 sacks on the season. Obviously, Joey Bosa's got 7.5, and I cannot even pronounce Nuwasu's first name. Ukina? Is that it? I hope I didn't chop it. If you're a Chargers fan, please let me know down below if I did or not. They are able to get to the quarterback, but like I said, interception wise, they've only got 9 on the season. Um, Michael Davis has got 3, and Rashawn Jenkins has 2. So those are your big interception guys. I just This team should be better than what they actually are. They've got some pass rush, but they cannot stop the pass. So this is a cold team. I don't see them going any further than what they've already went. Let's look now towards the Las Vegas Raiders, who are second in the AFC West at 7-6, but they're kind of on a very, very cold streak right now, losing 3 of their last 4. The last one being against the Indianapolis Colts, who they just got blown out in the second half of the game, ended up losing 44-27. The next teams that they play are the Chargers, the Dolphins, and the Broncos. I don't expect them to win against the Dolphins. The Chargers and the Broncos are 2 teams that I think that they could win against, however. If you go look at their statistics, though, Derek Carr on the season has been very fantastic. 68 completion percentage, over 3,300 yards, 24 touchdowns to 7 interceptions, and over a 100 quarterback rating is very, very solid. Has answered questions about whether or not Carr could step into this system and play well. He definitely has done that. Josh Jacobs is a beast. 831 yards. He's only averaging 33.8 yards a carry, but Devontae Booker's making up for that, 4.9 yards a carry, 384 yards. Between them, they have 12 touchdowns, 9 of them for Josh, and Devontae's only got 3. The problem is this team has 7 rushing fumbles, okay? Derek Carr's fumbled it 3 times. Jalen Richard's fumbled it once. Booker's fumbled it once. And Josh Jacobs has 2 fumbles. Darren Waller has been the guy, okay, on this team. No questions asked. He is the all-pro tight end on this team. 84 receptions for a tight end, 817 yards, 7 touchdowns. Nelson Aguilar has actually been playing quite solid for the Raiders. He has 38 catches, but 635 yards and 7 touchdowns to go with himself. Henry Ruggs has been a letdown. Everybody thought, oh, he's going to be the guy who's going to go deep and make people pay with his speed. But he's only been targeted 39 times. He's caught 30 of those. Or, I'm sorry, my apologies, 38 times. He's caught 23 of those, 414 yards. Now, like I said, his average 8 yards of reception, 2 touchdowns, but he's not had targets. He's not been able to get open and make things happen with that speed. Defensively, this team has been awful the entire year. 15 sacks. That's it. 15 sacks. And that's led by Max Crosby, the defensive end. I mean, with 6. And the next closest is 2 guys that have 2 sacks. Clelin Ferrell, who had 2 sacks in one game 2 weeks ago. And then Nicholas Morrow, the linebacker, has got 2 sacks as well. Their defense is not good. They can't stop the run. They're not very good against the pass as well. And they can't seem to get to the quarterback. And that's why their defensive coordinator was fired this past week after the massive loss to the Colts, where the offense for the Raiders scored 27 points, but the defense gave up 44. Well, not technically. They didn't give up 44 because there was a pick 6 in that game. Last but not least, I'm only going to go over the AFC in this stream. I will go over next week. On next Thursday, I will go over the NFC. I feel as though going for AFC one week, NFC the next will be good, because a lot of time that I've spent. Now, finally, we have the number 1 team in the AFC currently, the Kansas City Chiefs, who, I mean, honestly, how do you stop this offense, right? They're obviously on a hot streak. I mean, they beat the Dolphins, the Broncos, the Bucks, the Raiders, the Panthers, the Jets, the Broncos, and the Bills in a row. Now, they have the Saints, the Falcons, and the Chargers left. there's a darn good chance this team could end up 15-1. I got a feeling the only team that has any chance of beating them is a Drew Brees-led Saints. Patrick Mahomes has just been, oh my goodness, this year, right? He's better now than what he was when he was MVP 2 years ago. He's completing over 68% of his passes, 4,200 yards, 8.5 yards per pass attempt, 33 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Let's talk about also the 52 runs for 250 yards and 2 more touchdowns to go with it. I mean, my goodness, he's only been sacked 18 times, which is very, very solid. He's got a 112.3 quarterback rating. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was thought to be the rookie running back of the year, averaging 4.3 yards a carry. He's cooled off over the last second half of the season. 724 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns. Lev Bell, who the Chiefs went ahead and picked up after he was done with the Jets, has 41 attempts, 4 yards a carry, 162 yards, and he's added himself a touchdown. Tyreek Hill is just scary when he goes on reverses, isn't he? I mean, 12 times he's done that, and 122 yards, which is over 10 yards a carry, and 2 of those have turned into touchdowns. But who do you cover in the passing game? Do you cover Travis Kelce? Because this guy's got 90 catches, 1,250 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Or do you cover Tyreek Hill, who's got 77 catches, 1,158 yards, and 14 touchdowns? Wait. Or do you, I mean, those 2 guys right there are unstoppable. But if you get them, don't forget McCole Hardman is averaging almost 15 yards a reception. He's got 3 touchdowns to go along as well. My goodness. Sammy Watkins, who's been hurt a lot this season, he's averaging over 10 yards of reception, over 11 yards of reception. He's got 347 yards. He's got 35 catches out of the backfield for almost 300 yards. This team has got too many weapons on offense. Defensively, 24 sacks. And here's a surprising number for you. 15 interceptions this year for this team. Chris Jones has 6.5 sacks. Frank Clark, believe it or not, came alive, 5 sacks this year so far. And then, of course, you've got a few guys here and there, but they've only got 24 sacks. That's 2 sacks a game almost. That ain't too shabby. But when you got Tyrann Mathieu with 6 interceptions on the season, and then Daniel Sorensen with 3 to go along with that, and then, believe it or not, Rashad Breeland's got a couple, and so does L'Jarius Sneed, the safety. This team is getting interceptions. Why? Because this offense is so good at putting up points and getting ahead that they force other teams to throw the football. And when you're forced to throw the football, you know what you're doing. You're going after the quarterback and forcing him under pressure to throw the football under any circumstance. And that's how you're going to come away with bad decision-making by quarterbacks who are just trying to move their team downfield because they have no shot unless they do. They end up getting some sacks. They end up getting the interceptions. So I want to thank everybody who's watched this. AFC, hey, Laticore 44, Chubby Cubby, Silly Simon, and Edie O'Brien CFB. Thanks for the follow, by the way. Here on Sportscaster, this is my breakdown of who's hot and who's not, AFC Week 15 edition. I will go over the NFC next Thursday morning. I appreciate everyone who was here. If you are here and you enjoy this, please hit that like button, that little heart down there. If you can't do that and I didn't name you off right there in the chat, please make a profile. Just go right up there to that top corner and select make a profile. It takes you 15 seconds. You can link it to your Twitter, your Facebook, email, whatever. Then you can come back, hit the like, and share the stream. Let other people know that you enjoy what I'm talking about. And until next time, as usual, I'm Lawrence Owen, talking NFL as I love to do. And I want you to have a good one.
Just because a player's not a household name doesn't mean we can't make him a household name.